My mother-in-law was against me dating her daughter, so my girlfriend broke up with me. But after I started getting paid in a new life, her mother wrote to me first. I thought losing Anna was the worst thing that could happen to me. Her mom had always wanted someone better, someone richer. But a few years later, when life flipped the script and I found success, guess who slid into my inbox, asking for another chance on her daughter's behalf? So, here's the backstory. My name's Mark, 28M now, but I was just a broke 23-year-old college graduate trying to make ends meet when I met Anna, 24F back then, 29F now. She was everything I could have asked for, brilliant, kind, and breathtakingly gorgeous. We met through mutual friends at a summer barbecue, and within months, we were inseparable. But there was one massive roadblock: her mother, Ellen, 55F. Ellen was, how do I put this nicely? She was the kind of woman who could spot a knockoff Gucci bag from a mile away and judge you harder for owning one than for murder. She didn't just dislike me, she despised me. In her eyes, I wasn't boyfriend material, just a guy trying to scrape together enough to pay rent. Ellen had a certain idea of who her daughter's boyfriend should be: someone who could buy her a car at the snap of his fingers, not someone who spent weekends driving Uber to pay off student loans. From the first time Anna introduced me to her family, Ellen made it clear that I wasn't what she envisioned. "It's nice to meet you, Mark," she said that first dinner, her smile thin and cold. "Anna told me you're in between things right now. What's your long-term plan?" I tried to explain that I was freelancing in graphic design while looking for something full-time, but her eyes glazed over halfway through. "Freelance?" she muttered, like it was code for unemployed. It wasn't just the sly comments. She went out of her way to plant doubts in Anna's head. I overheard her once, on the phone, saying, "I'm just saying, Anna, you deserve stability. Someone who's already built their life. You shouldn't have to build it with them." It stung. I was trying, you know? Working every odd job I could find, saving every penny, and still hoping I could treat Anna to occasional date nights. Anna defended me at first, but it was clear her mom's words got to her. Then came the other guy. Ellen had been parading this guy named Peter, 30M, around like he was her personal golden ticket. Peter was a family friend, a junior executive at some finance company, and every time I was over, Ellen would find a way to bring him up. "Did you hear? Peter just bought his second condo," she'd say, her voice dripping with approval. Or, "Peter's such a catch, Anna. He was asking about you the other day." I didn't want to admit it, but I was starting to feel like a runner in a race I could never win. The final straw was Anna's 25th birthday dinner. Ellen had gone full on "look how perfect my family is" mode, hosting this fancy dinner at a place where appetizers alone cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I'd saved up just to contribute, even bought Anna this little gold necklace with her birthstone. Nothing crazy expensive, but thoughtful, you know. Anyway, the night's going fine at first. I'm doing my best to ignore Ellen's subtle digs, stuff like, "Oh, Mark, what is it you're doing now? Freelancing, right? Must be so freeing not having the stress of a real job." Classic Ellen. I just nodded and bit my tongue, but then she raises her glass. And I swear, this woman was born for passive-aggressive toasts. She goes, "Here's to Anna, my beautiful, ambitious daughter, who deserves nothing but the best. Someone who can truly match her energy and success in life." Then she just stares at me, smiling like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. I was about to brush it off when guess who walks in? Peter. Yeah, that Peter. The guy she'd been parading around as the perfect son-in-law material. Apparently, he just happened to be in town. Sure, Ellen. Totally a coincidence. Peter comes in with this overpriced gift bag and starts chatting up Anna like they're starring in some rom-com. I'm just sitting there, trying not to let it show, but inside I'm boiling. The worst part? Anna didn't even seem fazed by it. That night, on the drive home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was like, "What the hell was that, Anna? Your mom basically said I'm not good enough for you in front of everyone." She sighs and goes, "You're reading into it too much, Mark. She just wants what's best for me." I'm like, "Yeah, and in her eyes, what's best for you is Peter. Why don't you just say it?" And then she hits me with this. "Mark, maybe she's not entirely wrong. I mean, you're still figuring things out, and I don't know if we're in the same place anymore." That one gutted me. I didn't even know what to say. I just stared out the window the whole drive. A few days later, she came over and said she thought we needed a break. By break, of course, she meant breakup. I moved out of my tiny studio apartment a couple of weeks later, couldn't even afford the rent on my own anymore. Ended up crashing at my old college roommate's place. Shout out to Mike for letting me take his spare room. The worst part? Ellen wasn't even subtle about celebrating the breakup. Mutual friends told me she was practically gloating, saying things like, "Anna finally realized her worth," and "she's moving on to bigger and better things." Yeah, Ellen, I got the memo. For a while, I let all of it eat me alive. I'd lie awake at night replaying every argument, wondering where I went wrong. My freelance gigs dried up, my bank account hit zero, and I honestly thought I'd never bounce back. But after a few months of sulking, something shifted. I realized I'd been so focused on proving myself to Ellen, Anna, and the world that I hadn't been living for me. After Anna and I broke up, I was stuck in a weird limbo, heartbroken, broke, and sleeping in my buddy Mike's spare room, which doubled as his gym, a treadmill and a few dumbbells shoved in a corner. I spent my first few weeks there in a fog. You know that feeling when you're just going through the motions? That was me. But then, one night, Mike said something that snapped me out of it. He goes, "Dude, you can't sit around feeling sorry for yourself forever. Ellen's not gonna wake up one day and say, 'Mark finally wallowed enough. Let's give him a gold star.'" And as much as I wanted to punch him for mentioning her name, he wasn't wrong. So, I got my shit together. First, I started picking up every freelance gig I could find. Logo designs, website banners, even cheesy wedding invitations, I took it all. I told myself, "You might not be where you want to be, but you're not staying here." It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work. Within a few months, I had enough to rent a tiny studio apartment. I'll admit, the place was nothing to brag about, paper-thin walls, a stove that only worked half the time, but it was mine. At the same time, I started putting serious effort into building my portfolio. I spent hours watching tutorials, learning new design software, and creating mock projects to show off my skills. I even invested in some decent equipment, nothing crazy, just enough to make my work look more professional. The turning point came when I landed a contract with a local startup. They were looking for a designer to revamp their branding, and I guess my scrappy little portfolio impressed them. That gig led to another, and then another. Before I knew it, I wasn't just scraping by, I was thriving. But it wasn't just about work. I started hitting the gym regularly, partly because Mike dragged me there, but mostly because I needed something to focus on besides work. Slowly, I started feeling like myself again, or maybe even a better version of myself. By the time my 27th birthday rolled around, I had a steady income, a growing client list, and enough savings to move into a nicer apartment. It wasn't a penthouse or anything, but it had hardwood floors and a kitchen that actually worked. One day, while I was scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a post from Anna. She just started a new job and looked happy in the photo. I didn't feel bitter anymore, just neutral. It hit me that I was no longer stuck in the shadow of what Ellen or Anna thought of me. And then came the twist I never saw coming. So, I'm sitting at my desk, halfway through designing this logo for a client, when I get a text from a number I don't recognize. It says, "Hi Mark, this is Ellen. I was hoping we could talk." I swear, my brain short-circuited for a second. Ellen? The same woman who thought I wasn't good enough to breathe the same air as her daughter? The same woman who basically threw Peter in my face every chance she got. I had no clue what to make of it. I stared at my phone for a good 5 minutes before replying. "What's this about?" She hit me back almost instantly. "Can we meet for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss." At this point, my curiosity got the better of me. I agreed, because honestly, I needed to hear this nonsense in person. We met at this cafe downtown. Ellen walked in looking like she just stepped out of a country club catalog, pearls, tailored coat, the whole 9 yards. But her face? That was new. She looked uneasy. She sat down and hit me with a forced smile before saying, "Mark, it's been a while." In my head I'm thinking, yeah, it's been a while since you made me feel like dirt. But all I said was, "What do you want, Ellen?" And then she starts talking about Anna. Apparently Peter, the guy she'd been hyping as the second coming of Prince Charming, had been cheating on Anna with a coworker. The relationship went up in flames, and now Anna was living back at home. According to Ellen, she was devastated, and not herself anymore. Then Ellen says, "She misses you, Mark." She's too proud to reach out, but I know she regrets what happened. And I just sat there, staring at her like she'd grown a second head. I mean, this is the same woman who told Anna I wasn't good enough for her, who couldn't go 5 minutes without comparing me to Peter. Now she wanted me to swoop in and play knight in shining armor. She kept going, though. "I was wrong about you," she said. "You've done well for yourself. Better than Peter, clearly." That's when it hit me. This wasn't about Anna missing me. This was about me being the better option now that Peter had turned out to be a dirtbag. So I leaned back in my chair and told her straight up, "Look, Ellen, you don't get to decide when I'm good enough. You made it perfectly clear where you stood when Anna and I broke up, and I've moved on. I'm not interested in going backward." She just sat there, looking like she didn't know what to say. For the first time in her life, I didn't wait around for a response. I stood up, tossed a $10 bill on the table to cover my coffee, and walked out. A week after my coffee with Ellen, I thought I was done with the whole situation. I'd said my piece, walked away, and figured that was the end of it. But then I got a message. This time, it was from Anna herself. "Hey, Mark. Can we talk?" I stared at my phone for a while, debating whether to reply. Part of me was curious, but the other part? The part that remembered how everything had gone down. That part wanted to leave her on read. In the end, though, I decided I'd hear her out. She came over to my apartment later that week. As soon as I opened the door, I could tell she'd been through it. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days, and her usual confidence was nowhere to be found. We sat on my couch, and before I could even say anything, she just blurted out, "I'm sorry." I leaned back and crossed my arms. "For what, Anna?" "For everything," she said, her voice cracking. "For listening to my mom. For breaking up with you. For not standing up for us." She went on to explain how things with Peter had started out great: dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips, the whole fairy tale. But then the cracks started to show. He was controlling, dismissive, and oh yeah, cheating on her with some coworker the entire time. "I thought he was what I needed," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought my mom was right. But she wasn't. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid to see it." I won't lie, hearing her say that felt good. But at the same time, it pissed me off. "So let me get this straight," I said. "I wasn't good enough for you until Peter turned out to be a garbage person. Now you realize you made a mistake?" "It's not like that," she insisted. "I didn't leave you because I didn't love you. I left because I let her get in my head. I've regretted it ever since." I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. "Anna, I loved you. I would have done anything for you. But you let your mom tear us apart. And now that I've finally gotten my life together, you think we can just pick up where we left off?" She didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. After a long pause, I said, "Look, I don't hate you. I'm not even angry anymore. But I can't go back. I spent too long trying to prove myself to you and your mom. I've moved on, Anna. You should too." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I get it. I really do. I had to try." When she left, I felt a weird mix of emotions: sadness, relief, and strangely, pride. For once, I wasn't the guy trying to prove he was good enough. I was the one walking away. It's been a few months since that conversation with Anna. I haven't heard from her or Ellen since, and honestly, I'm fine with that. Life's good now. I'm working with bigger clients, my business is thriving, and I've even started traveling a bit, something I never could have afforded back then. It feels surreal sometimes, thinking about where I was just a few years ago. I also started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I've met someone who's different. She doesn't care about status or money, she just likes me for me. It's refreshing, and I'm taking things slow. As for Anna? From what I've heard through mutual friends, she's still living at home and trying to figure things out. Part of me feels bad for her. She got caught up in her mom's toxic mindset and ended up paying the price. But the other part of me knows she made her choice, just like I've made mine. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that you can't live your life trying to meet someone else's expectations. I wasted so much time thinking I wasn't good enough because Ellen convinced me of that. But the truth is, I was always good enough, I just had to see it for myself. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the guy Ellen tried to tear down. I see someone who's confident, successful, and finally in control of his own life. And honestly, that's better than any "I told you so" could ever feel.